Now, I don't know if this is true, but was a really cool metaphor. Do you know the difference between how a herd of buffalo deals with a approaching storm versus a herd of cows?
I have no idea.
Again, I don't know if this is true, but I heard this. Buffalo will charge directly into the storm and will keep running that direction, and therefore will blast out of the back of the storm and be involved in the storm less time than cows who run away from the storm. And then, of course, the storm catches up to them, and now they're running with the storm, so they're in it longer. So it's kind of
We're going to have to look this up and see if this is true. Is that where we get the term cowardly? All right, welcome back. This is Thrive AF, Thrive After 40. This is episode 8. I am Keith Collegia, one of your podcast hosts, one of the owners of CrossFit Terminus in Atlanta, Georgia, and I am here with my good friend, Lou Fratto. Lou, say hello to the fans, to the nation, to the audience.
Hey guys, Lou Fratto here, owner of Delray Care Physical Therapy in Delray Beach, and I guess I wrote the book Thrive, a Physical Therapist's Guide to Longevity that we're still talking about. So we're on another chapter today.
That's right. Yeah. Episode 8, but lever 7, right?
Yeah.
I got that right. And the lever we're going to talk about today is relationships and emotional well-being. So another, I think, interesting topic and a little bit different than what we talked about last week, which was technology. But no real preambles today unless you want to give the standard disclaimer for the audience.
Yeah. Well, as usual, this is really just intended for educational and informational purposes only. And again, as always, hopefully entertainment as well.
Yes.
But yeah, it's not meant to be medical advice or to replace what your a mental health person is telling you or your physician is telling you. So just keep that in mind.
Perfect. Sounds good. So I guess to kick it off, what I was thinking about this morning before we recorded and wanted to see if you could talk a little bit about how you got the inspiration to actually include this in the book as one of the levers. I'm just wondering if you remember where you got the inspiration to include this, since it's not really directly related to things like physical therapy or physical fitness.
Yeah, I think just on a personal note, I even though I'm probably kind of right in the middle of extrovert versus introvert, I can be happy by myself and I can be happy with people. Mm-hmm. I just find that in my own life, when I am hanging around quality relationships, people that I love, friends and family, it just makes me happy, So I think just from a personal standpoint, I knew intuitively that it's important. But then also when I started to want to write the book, I did a lot of research, and just in reading other books that were out at the time on longevity and looking at different studies, it kept coming up. And so there's just no doubt that the research supports it, that if you have quality relationships in your life, it helps with your emotional well-being. So the two are really, closely tied, and it also helps you live longer as well.
Yeah. Do you want to get into some of the key points about the relationships and emotional well-being and that connection to longevity and physical health?
Yeah, I think that just sort of on a global basis, we need people in our lives that are going to help us when we have challenges in our life. There's nothing better than having a community to support you. We can't handle everything alone as well as we can with people who are going to help us out, when we have those tough times. But also, I think that it's great to have people to celebrate when you're having some good times too, and when you're enjoying some wins in life. So it's just as important either way. And I know you had kind of sent some information along when we were kind of going over this beforehand, and they were talking about how even just your casual relationships of people that you see on a weekly basis, maybe at the gym or
Mhm.
maybe in a card group that you're in or something like that, is really important because those are, you tend to have positive experiences with them. You're laughing, you're saying, "Hey, how's it going?" and just enjoying the moment. And that's, I think, really helpful just on a continual basis as well.
Yeah. No, I agree. And I think that, I'm at a stage where I'm talking with my parents, for example, about what the next stage in their life is going to be. And as part of that, we've been looking at they live on their own right now, but eventually they'll probably move into some sort of community for older adults. And we have been looking at different, places around here. And one of the things that I noticed is if you talk to people in communities like that, both the staff and the people that actually live there, a big thing that comes up is how much they are trying to reinforce the idea of engagement with the community because there's this direct correlation, I think, between, especially as you get older, isolating or isolation can be a real challenge to a person's health and fitness. And the more that they can do to get people to engage with each other, building social activities and opportunities within the community like that is a big part of the focus. And I wasn't say I was surprised by it, but I was. It really reinforced the fact that it's become pretty standard, I guess, knowledge that you need to keep people active and engaged to avoid some of the dangers of being isolated, especially as you get older, if you can.
Right. And to me, I mean, that's makes life worth living, right?
Yeah.
Is it enjoying and having occasions and special times with people, and those communities are great for that. I have a lot of patients who are in those communities, and they have a more active social life than I do. I mean, it's
Yeah.
amazing all the different things that they're doing
Yeah.
continually. You
No,
know,
it's great.
yeah, I know my grandmother when she went into a community. Finally, she was living with my parents, and they did a great job, and they really turned around her health with helping her with what she was eating and managing her medications. And of course, she had a lot of quality family time. But then eventually she started falling a lot and they just couldn't pick her up and they didn't feel like they could keep her safe. So she went into a community that was just down the street. But then COVID hit and, there was they weren't able to visit her. And I remember my mom asked her, she said, would you like to come back home? Where we'll make it work. And she said, no, I actually have a lot of friends here and I'm having a really good time. She was really enjoying it. So she didn't
Yeah.
even want to leave.
Hey, good for her. I
Yeah.
mean, that's better than I guess better than the opposite. Were there any specific examples, either from the book or from the research that you did that went into the chapter on this that you wanted to talk about and kind of bring up as examples of how this has an impact on overall longevity and health and fitness?
Well, there's one study where, and I don't know the people to give credit to, I apologize for that, but there was a study where they said that loneliness was equivalent to smoking 15 cigarettes a day. And again, I can't give much detail on it, but that's a
Wow.
perfect example of just how detrimental isolation can be to your health.
Yeah.
You know, I wish I had the citation for that, but
Well, I can look it up afterwards and put it in the show notes, but that's a
yeah,
pretty stark statistic on the impact that it can have. Maintaining relationships takes work. I mean, it takes effort. And I think that's another piece of it that becomes maybe a little bit more challenging as you get older. And you have to be deliberate about the way that you maintain and kind of foster your relationships, just like you do any other lever or aspect of health and fitness, that we talked about. And I think that's one of the things that I'm finding with my own life is putting the investment into making sure that you're taking the time to, stay engaged and invested in the relationships that you have is just as important as taking time to go to the gym or, spending time thinking about more things like nutrition. And maybe that's a realization. I don't know if that's something that you talked about in the book in terms of the investment that you need to put into it, but was that something that you came across as you were researching the topic as well?
Yeah, well, it's definitely true. You have to be proactive, and you have to get out and get involved. I have several patients, or have had several patients over the years that are just, they struggle with, being able to find relationships or get involved and just having to help them, and speaking with other patients who seem to be doing really well at it. They
Yeah.
make the effort. You're right. They go out and they get involved in these groups, or they get involved and they play cards,
Mm.
every week. They just make sure that they're doing something on a regular basis. You're right. It does take work. And it seems like the older we get, the more work that you have to put into it.
Yeah. Was there a relationship between um, stress management and relationships that you came across when you were working on, or was that just part of emotional well-being overall?
Yeah, I just put it in there because the two seem to be so linked,
Mm.
and again, just knowing from intellectually that if you have people to help you go through tough times, that can help you manage stress. So I think that's why I put the two together, is that they're very closely linked. So if you have a community to help you out, that's incredibly powerful. And then also something we should talk about is dealing with loss. And this is something that is a miss from my chapter. I did not include this, and I really should have,
Mm.
because as we get older, I think that's more of a thing that we have to deal with,
Mhm.
and just seeing that some patients who just have lost spouses that they were married to, for decades, and just how difficult that is.
Yeah.
And seems like they got a lot of benefit out of professional help, whether it's counseling. There's definitely no shame in that, or bereavement groups. And then one patient in particular, after she nursed her ill husband for really years, and he passed away, she had kind of a rule where she said, I'm not going to say no to anybody who asks me to do something,
Hmm.
and she said, no matter how sad I felt, or, maybe didn't feel the desire to do it, she said yes anyway. And as a result, now we're a few years away from that. She has a really good base of friends, and she's very active and she's involved. And I think that helped her out a lot. And she would agree with that.
Yeah. Good story. You mentioned a Harvard study in the show notes here from somebody named Kelly McGonigal. Do you want to talk a little bit about what that study was and kind of what the findings were?
Yeah, that goes back to the stress management and sort of how you frame it. And the study was that if you have a kind of a threat mindset, so they put these people in a deliberately stressful situation. And if the people had a threat mindset where, like, okay, they viewed the stressful situation as a big threat, and oh my God, am I going to be able to handle this? Their physiology reacted in a much less healthy way than
Hmm.
if they framed it as, okay, this is a challenge, but I'm going to survive this and I'm going to get through it. And those people's body responded differently than the people who looked at it as a threat. So that was really interesting. So,
Hmm.
in other words, I think some of the details are like their heart rate went up in both groups. But in the group that looked at it like a threat, their peripheral, vascular arteries and capillaries and stuff constricted. And the other side of the group that looked at it more positively, yes, they had an increased heart rate, but their peripheral vascularization stayed open. And so it
Hmm.
wasn't as detrimental to their heart and their physiology. So that's just some of the details. But it was very interesting. Just the way you look at a challenge is very important on how stressful it is for you.
Yeah. You included some information, I guess, about different techniques that you might be able to use to deal with stress management. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so some of the techniques can be, you know, appropriate or helpful in an acute situation, like breathing techniques. There's all kinds of breathing techniques out
Mhm.
now. It's finally getting the attention that it deserves. But some of the key ones that I find really helpful are like the 4-7-8 technique. It's where you breathe in for 4 seconds, then you hold for 7, and then you exhale for 8.
Mhm.
And so if you're feeling just really stressed or frustrated, let's say you're running late and you're trying to get to work and you're at a red light, or at a train or something, that's a great technique to do a couple of those. And it just helps to calm you down. The Navy SEALs actually use a technique called box breathing. And an example of that would be you inhale for 4, you hold for 4, you exhale for 4, and then you hold that for 4, and you just keep doing that. And that
Mhm.
seems to also sort of interrupt the stressful physiology and can help you out sort of in the moment. And I also talked about meditation. And to me, meditation is something that can help make you a little more resilient to stress if you do it on a regular basis. So you want to hopefully develop a meditation routine that when you do have a stressful situation that hits, you're better able to handle it having done the meditation preemptively.
So you're doing the meditation when the stressful situation hits, or you're doing the meditation practice as a way to just keep yourself even, like you do it every day.
Yeah, so it can help when the situation hits. It can kind of calm you down,
Mhm.
but I think the real benefit comes from doing it on a daily basis,
Mhm.
especially in times when you don't need it, so that you build up the strength and the resiliency for when stress does hit, you handle it much better having done the meditation ahead of time.
And I think you mentioned on a previous episode that you had a protocol that you use regardless of day or situation. And that was part of your protocol as well, right? The
Yeah,
personal
yeah,
protocol.
right. I try to do some meditation every day. And I've been doing it for years, and it can be difficult, but
Yeah.
it is, I do find that I'm just much more even keel if I've been doing it regularly than if I've, sort of slacked off on it.
Yeah. Yeah. I had a situation recently where I've never really been consistent with things like breathing techniques, but I don't remember what happened, but it was similar to what you're saying about a stressful morning, traffic, and a lot building up. And I just used one of the apps. It might have been the Whoop app, actually, and realized that my heartbeat wasn't coming down as it normally does after I left the gym when I got home. So I just put on a breathing technique, which haven't really done a whole lot of in the past, and did it for, I think, 5 minutes, and it actually helped. And,
Yeah.
I don't want to say I was skeptical of breathing techniques. I just really I had not invested that much time into it. And, so I think there's definitely something to it. Calming yourself and trying to go through something like that, seems to have a pretty direct and immediate impact if you have the time to kind of invest in it, even if it's only 5 minutes.
Yeah. And even like you said, on an acute situation with the breathing techniques, if you focus on what you're doing with your breath, it helps you bring you into the present moment,
Yeah.
because usually when we're stressed, it's because we're thinking about something in the future or lamenting about something in the past. And it just helps to bring you right into the present moment. So just even that in and of itself is extremely helpful.
How did you get into meditation, and where did you go to kind of learn the technique that you use? Was it self-taught?
It goes back to my sleep issue and I just having the trouble with the sleep and getting back to sleep after waking up in the middle of the night. I had heard somewhere, this is years ago, probably 18, 20 years ago, that people who meditated could get back to sleep faster than those who didn't. So I thought, wow, okay, maybe this can help me out. So I actually went to a meditation class and learned some techniques there. And then the guy back then had a CD, so I bought the CD and I had this little CD player next to my bed and I'd have some earphones. And when I'd wake up in the middle of the night, I would put the earphones in and listen to the CD, and it did seem to help me get back to sleep quicker.
Mhm.
And so I just kept doing it. And then just through the years, it evolved into just a regular practice. And I learned, more about it and how it works and why it works and different techniques. Started off probably, I guess you would call it sort of similar to transcendental meditation, which is where you repeat a certain saying or a certain word, and then evolved into just mindfulness, which is where you're not repeating a word. You're just focusing on something like your breath going in and out. And that to me is actually more challenging because you don't have that word to sort of anchor you.
Yeah.
So it's now turned into more of a mindfulness type of meditation.
So I guess the equivalent today to the CD on the bedside table might be something that you could do on your phone. Like we talked about technology in the last issue. I know my wife actually bought a sleep mask that has Bluetooth, headphones built into it. And sometimes we'll put that on when she's having trouble getting back to sleep and play a meditation or, another something, an audio something to help her get back to sleep. So it might be a little bit more comfortable than the old CD headphones that we used to wear.
Yeah. The things have evolved. It's I definitely will use the phone with some earphones now, but it's funny because you don't want to be on your phone at night, but yet if you got to get to a breathing app, you kind of have to get to your phone. So it's like sort of a little bit of a
catch-22.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully you don't look at your email or your text while you're trying to find your meditation app.
Right. Got to avoid that. You don't want to get any interrupted announcements that you just got a, stressful email or something. But
yeah, that would be cross purposes, I guess. Well, cool. What else can we talk about when it comes to relationships, emotional well-being, stress management that you either covered in your book or we just want to hit?
Well, there's a really cool term called antifragile. Have you heard of that?
I read it in your book, but I hadn't heard about it until then.
Well, there was a book written around the time of when COVID first hit called Antifragile by Nassim Taleb. He's the one that wrote it. I think he coined the term, and it's a neat term because if you take three words and compare and contrast them, okay, so one would be fragile, one would be resilient, and one would be anti-fragile. Okay. So now this is his definitions. All right. So fragile is when you get kicked around by life and you fall apart, right? Resilient would be, okay, you get kicked around, but you bounce back to where you were previously. But anti-fragile is, all right, go ahead, kick me around because I'm going to come back stronger than I was before. So it's a really cool concept. And if you frame life's setbacks as challenges that you can utilize to make you stronger and a better version of yourself, I don't know. I find that it helps me deal with the setbacks and challenges better. So
and
I think
that kind of aligns with the stoicism topic we talked about, right? With Ryan Holiday and Obstacle is the Way. The whole point, I think, of that book is obstacles are opportunities, and just opportunities for you to kind of be anti-fragile as the way you defined it, and to come back and, view them as things that actually make you stronger.
Yeah.
And also inevitable.
Inevitable, and you should actually seek them out. I think there's plenty of people that say that, move towards them rather than away from them. Now, I don't know if this is true, but it was a really cool metaphor. Do you know the difference between how a herd of buffalo deals with a approaching storm versus a herd of cows?
I have no idea.
Again, I don't know if this is true, but I heard this. Buffalo will charge directly into the storm and will keep running that direction, and therefore will blast out of the back of the storm and be involved in the storm less time than cows who run away from the storm. And then, of course, the storm catches up to them, and now they're running with the storm, so they're in it longer. So it's we're
going to have to look this up and see if this is true. Is that where we get the term cowardly?
Maybe.
I doubt
Oh my gosh. Maybe.
We might have just stumbled upon something that is just hidden, forbidden knowledge the coward and cowardly and cows
Who
running
knows, man?
away from the storm.
Maybe, but think about, even if that's not true, what a great story.
Yeah. Well, what was I guess the quote, if you're walking through hell, keep walking or something like that. I don't know if you've heard, but heard
Keep
of
on
that.
going, yeah.
Exactly. So get through it as quickly as possible. All right. So we'll have to look up the legend of the buffalo and the storm.
Yeah,
See if
see if that's
actually true.
real.
That is a good metaphor, though.
Right. So let me look
Yeah.
at the page here, see if anything else comes back. Oh, well, of course, the other thing is focus on gratitude too, right? I think I
Yeah.
have that in there. Try to focus on what's good in your life and remind yourself of that,
Yeah. There was a book that I just remembered as you were talking about the buffalo story. Have you ever heard of the book Bowling Alone?
No.
So I guess the concept, and I've heard people talk about it on other podcasts and, specifically talking about things like loneliness and the loneliness epidemic. But it's called Bowling Alone, The Collapse and Revival of American Community. And it was published in 2000. And it takes the, sort of small example of decline of what used to be very common, which is bowling leagues, as an opportunity for people to get together and have social interactions, and the way that communities have changed. So as people started moving further apart from each other, out into suburbs, into less dense areas, bowling leagues are one example of a thing that kind of went into decline. And it makes a lot of connections between just broader changes in society and the way that's impacting our relationships and our opportunity to be in social situations like that. So that might be an interesting one for people to look into. I'll put a link to the book in the show note.
Yeah, that's interesting. It also kind of reminds me, like you said, changes in society, just how technology can bring us together, like you and I right now talking. You're in Atlanta, I'm in Florida.
Right.
But I think for a large part also it's pulling us, maybe isolating us more.
Yeah. I mean, it's a good point. Texts have kind of maybe replaced phone calls, which have replaced some part of actually getting together face to face with people. So again, I think it goes back to the fact that it takes work to maintain these relationships, and it takes effort and intent. I'm finding it like professionally, trying to keep my professional network up because I have gone through a job change in the last year. But I'm trying to take a more proactive approach of actually inviting people that I used to work with or people that I know through my professional network to actually go out and have lunch, which used to be something that was fairly common, but changed a little bit, I think, during COVID. And, it takes a little bit of effort to reach out and actually put a lunch on your schedule and go meet with people. Yeah.
And for the most part, you always feel better after those things.
I was about to say the
fun.
same thing. Like, like you said before, you never feel worse after going to the gym. And, it's rarely, if ever, do you feel worse after, connecting with somebody, having lunch, sitting down, or going to an event and actually interacting with people, making that intent. So, and then you wonder, why was it so hard for me to just do it,
I know, it's kind of like, it's just inertia, Newton's laws, object in motion stays in motion and an object at rest stays at rest. That's how I find myself. It's like once I get going, it's so much easier to stay moving and going than that first initial step,
Yeah, for sure. You mentioned too that you're kind of more on the introvert scale. And, one of the things that I understand about being an introvert versus an extrovert isn't necessarily that you don't like being around people if you're more introverted, but you get energy from different things. So introverts tend to need time away from people to recharge, where extroverts actually get a lot of energy from being around more people. And it's not that you can't sort of, teach yourself or force yourself if you are introverted to do public speaking or be in an event or go to a trade show where you have to talk to a lot of people all day. It's just that it might sap your energy more than if you were more extroverted. So that's maybe another reason why it can be a bit of a challenge.
Yeah, I would totally agree. I get energy from both. Like I get energy while I'm
Mhm.
around people. I love it.
Yeah.
But then I also need time to recharge too. It's like
Mhm.
there's a certain point I'll hit where I'm like, okay, wow, I just,
Yeah.
need to decompress or whatever, So I
Yeah.
need a little bit of both.
Yeah. I think that's pretty common. All right. Well, was there anything else you wanted to cover?
I think that's pretty much it. It's a pretty simple topic, but it's super important. And like you said, it takes work, takes an
Yeah.
investment, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. It's simple, but also, I think, profound in a lot of ways, and could be a little bit complicated, but that idea of anti-fragility is an interesting concept. And also just the idea that we get so much out of these relationships with other people that maybe we don't think about consciously, but it does a lot of good for us health wise, longevity wise, and just in general.
Yeah. And I don't mean to, I think what I meant was the relationship part is a simple concept. And the stress part of it is that can be really challenging for people. And then we all go through times in our life where we have more stress than others. And I know that that's definitely can be super challenging. So I don't want to, you know, minimize that at all.
No, no, for sure. For sure. All right. Well, I've only got 2 shout outs this week. So I don't know if you've got any, but maybe we can go through them real quickly.
Okay.
At least the ones I had. One is for an old gym buddy of mine, Brian Bobian, and he put a comment on our last episode on YouTube. And the episode was about technology. And he just said he really loved the episode and the podcast. So thanks, Brian.
Cool.
Appreciate it. He was part of our old morning crew. So when I told the story last week about my friend Neron, who also commented, Brian said he misses the old CrossFit morning crew and loved hearing from Neron and so many others as we were figuring out life on the fly.
Cool.
And he said, "Keep up the good work, gents." So
All right.
thanks,
Thank you.
thanks, Brian. Thanks for listening. Appreciate it. Hopefully we can run into each other soon. The other shout out was just a quick birthday. So Daniel Truman is another one of our coaches at CrossFit Terminus. He had a birthday. He is a really good coach, really great guy. He is a big UGA fan. So during football season, he really likes to bust my chops,
Nice.
but good naturedly. I think he forgets that I have, that my wife went to UGA and I have a kid that attends UGA. So I'm not as militant about
Right.
it as I used to be, but that might change if our football team ever gets better again and we're actually have a competition. But
Exactly. We have not been able to say anything to
No.
UGA fans for quite a few years. So
yes, that's been really fun living in Atlanta and having family
oh,
at the school. But yeah, I've actually come around to be able to kind of root for UGA almost when we're not playing them, but it's tough.
yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah. So those were the only ones that I had. Did you have anything that you wanted to bring up? Chat
Well,
out,
I would
folks?
just like to mention Trisha. She is
Yeah.
the guest contributor this week for our email stories. She
Mhm.
wrote a personal story, her story about beating cancer. And I know her and I knew her during that time. And she was amazing how she dealt with it and just how brave she was. And it's really related to this topic today because talk about dealing with stress, and dealing with a
Yeah.
challenge and then reframing it to actually fight it and come out of it on the other end stronger.
Yeah.
I just encourage everybody to read that email, and it's yeah, just what an amazing story. And thank you for sharing your story, Trisha, and for just being such a great person and making it through that battle with such
Yeah.
classist honor to know her.
That's great. Yeah, it's a really good story. And for those of you that are not subscribed, what Lou's talking about is the Substack, which is essentially a email subscription platform. And you can get to it at thrive-af.com. And there's always a link to it in our show notes. It's pretty easy to subscribe. It's totally free. We send out an article once a week typically midweek. Sometimes we have guest contributors, and sometimes it's just information from me and Lou. So go ahead and subscribe. I guess the other plug is follow us on Instagram. And I'll put a link to our Instagram account, our growing Instagram account, which has been fun. Mostly clips from the show, but sometimes other stuff. So kind of learning our way back into social media and seeing how that goes. That's been good. All right. Other than that, I don't have my notes for the sign off. So I'm going to rely on you to lead the charge. I remember the first part and the second part. So I'm going to try it again.
Yeah, go ahead. You do the first part.
Okay. Thanks for listening. And until next time,
keep challenging yourself.
Keep growing. And keep thriving
AF. Hey, that was better.
That's not bad. You have gotten a lot slower in the pace in the final part. Well, I have gotten faster, but
again, we have never rehearsed this. We probably should put some effort into rehearsing it.
Yeah, I don't know. At least it feels organic when we screw it up.
It's definitely organic.
All right, bud.
All right. Good seeing you, man.
Have a great week. Yeah, you too. And we will talk again soon. Thanks, everybody.
All right. Bye.